Hey everybody, welcome to episode 149 of Tactical Crouch. Kickedtripod here with Yiska and Volamel. Only 2 days. We're actually doing a 2-day week of shows, so good for us. Proud of all of us for finally having the time to do a second and or third show in a week. That's good for us. Big thank you to everybody who's here hanging out with us at twitch.tv/Kickedtripod. We do record live on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Again, twitch.tv/Kickedtripod is where you can go to find that out. Otherwise, search for Tactical Crouch anywhere, including youtube.com/tacticalcrouch. And of course, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/tacticalcrouch. We really do appreciate it. Patron producers. Sorry, I just remembered that we had a new patron producer, and I forgot to add
new
their
producer
name.
Pog. I hope it's good.
It was somebody who upped their pledge.
Oh, thank you,
Nice.
somebody.
So here's what I'm gonna have you do. I'm gonna have Joe. I'm gonna have you go through the patron producers and thank them while I make sure I get the name, and then we'll do a little thing.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Okay. Our news is brought to you by these wonderful people: Refined Bean, Freddy and Yopin, Battle Crab, Loshan, Rex Saint, Audio Compass, Kasha 67, Chara, Picasso, Nathan, Your Misery, Hunter Tane, Fabled Steven, Roger B. Owen, Chris R34444, Horbjorn. I listen to this podcast whilst on the toilet and in the shower, thinking of Yiska, Peace Camper, and Shrek 2 on DVD. Not VHS, though. Might I add. Thank you for the support. And if you can't necessarily support, COVID got you pinched, you can always go on iTunes and leave that 5-star review. Help us with the discoverability and all that stuff. And hello chat. Welcome to 149. Kind of a big number. Kind of crazy.
Really is, yeah. Like, did you find it, John?
Leave me alone.
He can't hear you. He can't hear you.
I mean,
But while he's figuring that out, how have you been? How are things?
I got it.
reporting day, thus stress,
True.
but
True.
otherwise, yeah, pretty happy with what we're able to put out today. So,
All right,
all
I'm
good.
back. So sorry. So we do have 2 brand new patron producers this week. Woo! And we had, of course, Shrek 2 on DVD, brand new as well from last episode. Sir Girthalot, brand new patron producer. Woo!
Now that's a name.
And they've made the rounds in chat many a times. Bronze Bot Boo How coming in here. It's a new patron producer as well. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Again, that's patreon.com/tacticalcrouch if you want to do that. All right. Let's listen to Yiska cry and whine a little bit more about getting to write about video games for a living. Go ahead, Yiska.
no, all good. I'm having a good time overall. Yeah, it's just a little bit stressful, right? You don't want to miss. You want to be thorough. You want to be productive, bring value, all that good jazz, right? And
Sure.
that means I had 75 minutes of workout according to her Fitbit today. So, yep.
Your cortisol levels are probably
through
the roof.
But otherwise, all good. Like I'm getting calmer. Like I'm already only at 105 beats per minute for over 3 hours, not 130, 140. So we're getting used to it. It's all good.
It's good.
That's
the body's tempering.
Yep.
Do you have a lava lamp back there?
I do.
Where do you see a lava lamp?
The large dildo shaped thing back there. It's even got the little red nip on top.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess
You know how long I have had that thing? Since military service.
So from last week.
No, like must be I think 14 years, 13 years, something like that.
Oh wow.
12.
You just never use it. You just have it.
Sometimes I use it. Sometimes it's as atmospheric, but otherwise it's mainly cringy, which is why I never showed you it. But now I.
I mean, you've always shown us that. You've just never pointed it out. So
you know what the best part is? I feel like people think I'm prepared for Christmas, even though these things here, Christmas decoration, right?
Yeah.
That's from last year.
You just never took it down.
No, I took it down. Someone gifted it to me for like something that I did, and I never removed it. I thought that was such a nice gesture. I'm keeping it.
I'm trying to figure out what it is, but it's kind of indiscernible from Discord.
It's like a vase that has like sand in it and a little heart. That's
cute.
Ironically black, but you know, I forgot if it was red in the beginning. Yeah.
Very interesting. Well,
There we go.
John.
All right.
What'd you do?
Oh man.
Yep.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Oh, Jesus Christ, guys. Right. Okay. So you cracked it
Anyways.
open. We can swear. Nice.
Dildo isn't a swear.
That's not a cuss. Don't say a cuss. All right, let's get to Overwatch. Jesus.
All right, let's jeez. We've got a lot of news. We're gonna go through these pretty quick because we've got a few topics that we want to actually spend more time on.
Right.
So let's do that, and let's start with one of the big ones, and that would be Erster to the Shanghai Dragons. Nice.
Yeah.
Tuck.
Kind of, definitely. I hear some quacking going on, but
right.
Value move, good. It's a little weird.
I don't understand. Why do you need a hyperflex DPS when you're the
The MVP
and lip as well?
Yeah.
Like I don't quite get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean they did lose Ding and DM, so I suppose
100%.
it makes sense.
And again, it kind of goes back to the idea that, the Asian teams have a little bit more to kind of like toss around. I wouldn't be surprised if Shanghai makes some more signings. Yeah, I think it's a good move. It's just like, okay, what are we gonna do with Erster? Where does he fit within Moon's grand plan? And what does this team really look like in 2021? Good, but kind of question, like, where are we going?
Yeah,
Going shopping.
Apparently,
I'm kind of
Black
excited.
Friday, man. If it's on sale, it's on sale. You just buy it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you need it. You just buy it.
That's also self-care in essence. But yeah, like, I mean, if you're a Moon that just hasn't won championship, you maybe just buy yourself a known quantity, an Erster.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think I'm kind of excited what this might mean, because I feel like we haven't seen the best of Erster in a hot minute. So that seems like a confidence move from Moon, and I hope he knows how to use Erster. And if that happens, then he can be a pretty good upgrade, not upgrade, but like it depends. Like let's say, and I'm not sure, I don't have that kind of access to China, but let's say if you are part of the teams that have to downsize this season, and you have to let go of DM and Ding, then you probably aren't going to bring in 2 DPS on top of that. And therefore, Erster is a fine choice because he covers both ranges. And while there is overlap, of course, there's overlap between 2 hyperflex DPS players.
Yeah,
of course.
It's
3.
kind of inevitable.
So, yeah, not that. I'm surprised, most definitely. I'm not mad at that, though.
No, not at all. It's one of those moves that your eyes go, oh, very cool, like super interesting, and then your brain starts to wonder, like, okay, like is this like a justice move, which we'll dive more into later, where you're trying to maybe focus somebody in one direction and less in the other? Is this, broadening the horizons to be able to do that? It's interesting. I want to see. I'd love to actually pick Moon's brain on this and really kind of like, okay, where and why, and is this really just because you've worked with him before? I'm interested to see what Shanghai looks like, because again, I still think they need just a few more. Give me like one more player at flex support, and I think we're finished with that. But
yeah, well, and this is a team. So last year they ran 12. We don't know what they're going to be running this year as far as size goes, right? But you're gonna have redundancy and overlap if they're going to be running 10 to 12 players again this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense. I think the surprising thing, right, is that I think that there's a lot of I assume that there's a lot of lower level teams that would give him an obvious starting kind of role for Erster.
Yeah.
That, on this one, it's very much obvious that there's going to be some sort of rotation going on based on the meta and who's playing well and whatever Moon decides, I guess.
Could be one of those, like, what's the best? Erster's looking at all the offers on the table and looking at what's the best course of action if he wants to win. Like, if he's really going for a ring, is Shanghai the best, offer he has on the table? If so, then maybe he's okay with, having that rotation if winning is the end goal. Which I wouldn't be surprised if it was. A lot of players are like that.
I think like we genuinely need to wait how rosters shape up, if there's any more signings and whatnot. I think a lot of people will be. The next season will be won by very different metrics than this season, just due to the decreased roster size, while many other things appear to not change. So I'm a little bit concerned for that part, but yeah, we'll eventually be able to talk about that.
For sure.
All right, Joe made us promise not to spend too long on each of these signings.
I mean, there's just so much to go through.
Let's hammer him through.
We're going to go to the next one. That's the Philadelphia Fusion. They bring back Poko and EQO.
Wait, have they announced that?
Yep. Both are out.
Oh, I missed the EQO re-signing.
Yep.
Oh, that's an hour ago. Well, that explains it. Yeah. Okay.
This is the guy who's bringing you leaks.
Live reactions.
Yeah.
No, I knew that it would happen. I just
didn't
knew
even
it was.
know.
Right.
He wasn't even sure who EQO was.
I think people are going to look at this as like, oh, this isn't good. Boo. We don't like this. I think this is still going to land Philly like a top 5 spot, like for sure.
If
I think
EQOs are only, I guess, are we talking about EQO or Poko?
I think both. Just like this, I think with the departure of people like Fury and Ivy and the re-signing and or contract extension of Poko and EQO, I think people like just with their gut think the former is more damaging than the latter builds them back up, if that makes sense. And I don't think that that's the case. I think people really sleep on EQO. I don't think he's had much time in the sunlight in the last year. And I know that can kind of seem crazy if you only watched the Summer Showdown, or what was it? Was it the Summer Showdown? I think it was. But yeah, didn't see a ton of play time. And Poko's always been an absolute just stud at flex tank. I think this team's going to be very, very good still, and is still front running top 5 for me.
So you think that EQO and Poko are likely to be the starting flex DPS and tanks, and you still think that this is a top 5 team?
Oh yeah, 100%, without a doubt. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're fringe for me. They're fringe. They're definitely on the low end of that. I think that haven't seen enough consistent EQO. I mean, haven't seen him consistently. Not that EQO has necessarily been inconsistent, but that we haven't seen him play consistently enough throughout the entirety of a season.
Sure.
Same with Poko. To a lesser extent, I guess. And primarily like in that like diva role, right? So I don't know, man. This I see 4 out of these 6 spots being absolutely killer.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I think Poko's definitely in contention for like a best Western flex tank. Is he really punching up in terms of like global rankings on that? And I hate like just ranking everything right now, but he doesn't jump off the page when you expand the scope. But I think for Philly, I don't think you need a ton of people that just like slap. I don't think you need a bunch of all-stars. I think you need people that work within this system. And it seems like 9K likes what they offer. And I not only trust them or trust him in his coaching ability, but I also like these players. I think they're good. Maybe not great, but just good.
I'm gonna be honest though, I'm kind of hoping that these are just kind of depth players and that we see at least one additional signing in either one of those roles.
Could be. I mean, if there is a Western team that has the capital to be able to do so, I would imagine it's probably Philly. So it's definitely possible that option's still on the table, that they can really kind of add the depth there.
I mean, let's look. I mean, Rascal's still not signed. Ivy,
sure.
Nero, Shockwave, Nice. I mean, Fury, Gargoyle, Bernard. Like there are still like there is still options. Depth there.
Yep.
I mean, even all the way down to like table. I know you're gonna hate it, but like Hotba, dude, all the way down there.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hold on, you didn't put this in here.
What?
And we need to talk about this.
Oh, it's on the notes. I think if
what is?
Are we talking gravy?
Oh, it is there.
Yeah.
Yes, Eric put it there. Thank you, Eric. Let's finish up on Philly first, and then we can.
I mean, I think I got my piece out. Yiska.
Right. I think Philly needs to be judged against the competition they will face, and boys and girls and others, like we're in for a party next season. Smaller teams means more banger teams. Very, very easy. I think the way things are shaping up, there's probably 5 teams that are as good as Philly, and probably only 6 teams with only the Shock, I think, being expected to be better. Everyone else, like there's a bunch of banger teams. Many we already know about. We know about Glads. We know about.
Can't forget our favorites about the Dallas Fuel now.
Dallas Fuel, definitely. Yeah. I'm saying 7 names and I can't even think of them. I think there's a possibility that Toronto will be great. Houston has a potential. Justice, we're going to talk about it. Even though that's probably a little bit weaker than Philly. Who else am I? Florida.
There's a lot of teams that could be good. Yeah. I think that kind of definitely, carves a hole in that 7-team list, even though, then there's the Asia region, which who knows what's going on with that. Like there's a lot of good teams coming up, like you're saying. It really kind of comes down to the shrinking of the roster, and which kind of contrasts the worries coming into the season that like, oh, maybe we'd see too much budget, or we wouldn't see a ton of good teams, or that delta would be really big. It doesn't seem like that's the case at all. It seems like budgets have stabilized as well as they could have, and the big worry in the offseason might be that there's talent left on the table that we'd like to see, which is a kind of a weird problem to have.
Inevitable. No, it's almost inevitable. Okay. We're juicing.
Got some juice.
I think there's a real possibility
Okay.
that we are currently in the first stage of roster building. Meaning,
Okay.
a lot of teams will be 7 to 8 players.
Yeah.
Also, teams you don't expect to only have that many. And then, and that's something that is rumored, we're going to have a preseason. And after the preseason, once
Then you get more
teams
signings.
find out, okay, we're actually not as good as we thought we would be, then I think there's a possibility for another wave to come in, possibly. I don't know if then you can sort of activate another budget stuff, especially depending on how much you already have invested. But that's the hope for the teams, that they can course correct, because straight up, there ain't no not enough spots left for all these amazing players. Like there just isn't, if those are the restrictions.
To your point, though, like, we do have to remember that a lot of these new contracts do have the clause that they can just part ways with the player at any point. If I'm understanding that correctly, is that make sense? Is that,
I mean, okay, you can
track
negotiate that out of your contract, right?
Okay, fair.
So players have the ability to not have that in their contract, and therefore not have the this 30-day rule
And
or whatever, or how long
class.
And business.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more, and because we don't have access to them, we actually don't know what's happening. Which adds a level of volatility, I think, that we didn't have before, and that kind of is probably anticlimactic for fans. We'll see how that goes. I think generally teams will not, just be revolving doors, though, because
for sure,
like, synergy is too important and takes too long to build up. So yeah, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Yeah,
I think it'll probably be triggered at least once or twice this season, though. I'd be surprised if majority of the league negotiated that out of their contracts, and I wouldn't be shocked to see somebody just like dropped, just like no kind of definitely warrant in the back end, but in the public's eye, it's just like, whoa, that guy's good. Why did we drop him? That's weird. I think that'll probably definitely happen, but neither here nor there. John, tell us about Gravy.
No. We got it. We're gonna keep going. We've got more of these things to talk about. We should probably go to the London Spitfire next, because there's a few things that have changed here. Sanguinar and Bernard are out, and Reprise and Commander X coming in on the coaching staff. Reprise in the head coach role, Commander X in the assistant coaching role. So
good things.
Down to Glister and Fuse on the confirmed 2021, or not confirmed, I will say, but I will say that are technically still under an existing contract for the 2021 season.
Right. It seems like they couldn't come to an agreement with Sanguinar and Bernard, or at least trade them in some facet. That was the kind of theory that was, I also kind of bought into, is that they were kind of keeping them around till November 13th, seeing, what offers they were getting, fielding all possibilities, to obviously try and find the player's new home and, get some value out of them. Doesn't seem like these two necessarily made the cut, but the other two still might be on the table, which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
And Reprise and Commander X, all good things. Reprise obviously coming from a pretty strong stint on the Valiant, and Commander X being a big portion of why the Hurricane are as good as they are. Yeah, good things. I like it.
Yeah, I feel like as we see more of the signings, we'll have more to say here. These are really impactful signings, and we probably should spend a lot of time on it, but I think it makes more sense to wait until we at least start to see a little bit more about the direction that this organization is going. Nuki has talked to us about the direction of London Spitfire. Go back, watch a couple episodes ago when Nuki was on the show, talk about the direction, talk about some of the unique challenges and that was before there was a coaching staff announced. So let's give it a little time, but we will definitely spend a ton of time on London Spitfire.
London will get their time. The one thing I will say, last thing on London, if you want to look real smart in front of your friends, look at where Reprise has coached before, or look at where Commander X has coached before. I don't think I need to spell this out.
I feel like you do, though.
I mean, that'll probably tell you where they're looking in terms of players.
Oh,
You can come up to your conclusions from that point. I mean, one of them, it kind of makes a whole lot of sense, being, you know, an assistant coach to an academy team that's right under them. That makes a whole lot of sense. But I think what people aren't looking at is where Reprise is coming from in his past, the players that he's worked with. Maybe seeing that if they can bring some of those players over, I'd start there.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it at that for now. And let's talk about the Hangzhou Spark really quick.
Yes.
Takoyaki and MCD to Spark. Those are
very
the two
underrated pickups, I think.
Interesting.
How valuable they are right now. One a little bit more so than the other, but I really wonder, and this is something that I do plan or want to dive into a little bit more when there isn't other pressing issues to kind of talk about, is how much value we're actually putting towards depth going into 2021. Is that something we appreciate? Is that something we're weighing highly? If so, I think Spark killed it with Takoyaki. If not, what does this mean? Are they worried about Gush at all? I don't know. That's on its face. It doesn't seem like Takoyaki would ever start, at least in my summation. Maybe for specialist picks, and maybe you divide the main tank roll up a little bit. It's not that Takoyaki can't play and probably deserves a spot in the league, but is a little weird. Whereas MCD, obviously the upgrade to Bebe, I think is a great player, is going to do the Spark some justice. Does this kind of say anything about Coldest? I've always viewed Coldest in like a very specialist kind of role. While he was good domestically on other picks, I just don't know if that's going to hold up in the grand scheme of things. And I think he'll probably be the rotational flex support, and you'll probably see MCD start. I think they're good picks overall.
Yeah, solid. Last one before I can go on my rant. Toronto Defiant have signed Aztac. That was not long ago, right?
No, I think just a couple days ago.
Yeah, so we're down to Logic's Beast and Aztac.
It's a little weird, but I'm not mad at it. I think Aztac is another good player, another one of the better flex supports coming out of South Korea this season, and yeah, it's a good start for building out Toronto. I'm still like, again, we'll probably spend some time on Toronto once we get a little bit more information on them.
But
with KDG and, you know, what have you. But yeah, it's a good pick. I just need to see the rest of the team and what this system really looks like before I can dive too far into it.
Yeah, I think Aztac generally was pretty high regarded as in terms of like flex support pickup. I know that the people on our spreadsheet had him as the second most desirable flex support this season. Of course, like keep in mind our evaluations were a little bit outdated in the sense that a couple of those agents that became free agents weren't actually on the list by the time we started doing that. It's just a general point, but yeah, I think this is a really, really good pickup. It's hard to find someone to compare him to, but I would say like a tier point 1.5 flex support is fair to say. Like not 100%. Like a Violet, but like whatever half tiers below that.
Good, not great.
Yeah.
Cool. Do Toronto proud.
All right. Are we ready?
Get him.
Let's go.
Let the dog off the chain.
So I have recently learned that no Overwatch League team has decided to sign McGravy, and instead McGravy has been signed to Revival.
Yep.
What the are you doing, Overwatch League teams? This is a dude that some of you, there are so, and I tweeted this. I said, there are too many teams who have worse players and way worse marketing to not sign McGravy. McGravy is just a free marketing machine for you Overwatch League teams who don't understand or are unwilling to invest in marketing. Like, I'm so sorry. It just doesn't make any sense to me. You obviously signed McGravy to a slot here. You put him on the squad. I think I checked it out. He's got 20,000 followers, which isn't huge, but it's kind of larger in the Overwatch community. There are some Overwatch League teams right now that only have 60,000 Twitter followers. They aren't succeeding at brand building, and you put a player like McGravy there to kind of get your shit together for a moment and build that a little bit more. If I have invested $20 million into an Overwatch League team and I have 60,000 followers, bro, I'm sorry. Like, that's just not okay. McGravy is an obvious option to do that. And dude can play well enough anyway. Dude can play well enough. And that is where I just like, this blows my mind that there are teams in the Overwatch League without enough self-awareness to know that they need a player like McGravy on their team.
Let me ask this. So here's the problem, right? Let me set the stage this way. We're in a scarcity era of Overwatch League, right? Like, everyone's playing, like, has very tiny rosters in comparison to before. Mm-hmm. You can assume the budgets resemble that. Do you think someone like McGravy pays for himself? Yeah. Despite whatever he brings, because I think a lot of the Overwatch League coaches probably disagree on the skill level. And that's where the disagreement comes from.
Oh, for sure. I think this is not a sign of, oh, we're going to win the league by signing McGravy. I think this is the scarcity of resources. And because of that, we need to work on the base. We need to work on the content, the branding, like what John's saying. And I think that is a clear path you could go through. I think we're coming to a weird conundrum with the Overwatch League where people are probably going to start settling on these smaller kind of conjoined rosters. And there's going to be talent left on the table. And it's like, okay, do we need another team? Do we need an expansion team? Is that something that's even feasible business-wise? Because there is Western talent. There are Western options. And we're seeing this with like teams like London, teams like Paris, that you can go Western and still be competitive, maybe not the best, but be marketable, have that business acumen, and maybe plan for a title in the future. I think that's definitely on the table, and that's something that McGravy could be the spearhead for. I tend to agree with John here. I think if a team was interested in going Western and weren't necessarily hell-bent on winning or performing extremely well or toppling the shock, I think McGravy does that job and does it really, really well. He's not a bad player by any stretch of the imagination. I think he had a great season last year, on top of being, an award-winning, flex tank for his extracurricular activities. I really do think that he not only deserves it, but is good enough for it.
Do you think McGravy is making more with Revival than league minimum?
No way. Not a chance.
Right. Like, I can't. So it's either he wasn't offered a contract, in which I put it on the the onus on the franchises they're looking at this far too one-dimensionally. And
I would agree with
that. I think that's really asinine, honestly. I think it's the dumbest thing. I think it's asinine. I think it's actually throwing. And
I agree with you. Go ahead.
No, I lost my train of thought now. Go ahead.
I agree
brand
with you.
throwing is a great term, though. I'm already a fan of that term.
It's a brand throw.
Think there's not enough buy-in to go Western in their minds, and like the org's minds, like, for whatever reason. And that's not to say that you couldn't put McGravy on a mixed roster for whatever reason, right? Like that obviously can be a case as well. I think people are like really gun shy with this idea that like you can build a good team but not a great team, and like that's okay. Like and that permeates from the community up into it feels like even the management on some of these orgs, where it's just like, if we're not winning, we're losing. It's just like that's not how kind of business works either, because you did pay 20 million. That money needs to get kind of recuperated somehow. So we all can't win. You're paying these players top dollar. You're digging yourself a deeper hole. When does the buck stop? When does that kind of paradigm shift? I agree with you. It's just we need teams to kind of shift that direction, and they don't seem to want to.
It just doesn't make sense when you're building your roster for depth, when you're building your roster to, and I'm already like, there's somebody in chat who's saying like, build a marketing for social media, and nobody thinks that, or everyone seems to think that he's not amazing. Number one, no one said he's amazing, and amazing is a super like relative term. Is he amazing would he be amazing on some of these low tier teams? I actually think he would be really good for some of these lower tier teams who are actually going to inevitably sign worse flex tanks. Yep. There are going to be worse flex tanks in the Overwatch League than McGravy.
Maybe. I think one problem is also the teams that might are European. And I'm not sure if you want to bring.
I think there are definitely Western North American teams in particular, two off the top of my head that I give the side eye to.
Say him, Adam.
I look at Boston and I look at Vancouver. Obviously haven't made moves yet. Not super big on their moves in the past though.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Those are fan names. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just purely based on if we only factor skill into it. Which, let's be honest, budget and marketability also factor into that. Once you all of a sudden say, like, McGravy is probably a close to league minimum player that you sign, and he's going to bring you way more than that in marketability alone, your argument that he's not amazing so he doesn't fit onto a team, honestly, is completely invalidated, basically.
I think this opens up such a big discussion on, like, what it means to run a team. Because we have to remember, and the community kind of has to be like reminded that not everybody's going to win. Not everybody's going to make playoffs. So with what you have, what are you actually going to do? When you look at some of the Canadian teams that have made comments in the past, you know, like trying to build like a local roster, it's like, okay, that's the kind of mentality that they're approaching this with, where it's, we know what we have. We know we can't compete. So how do we build a base for the future to be able to do so at a later date, or to be able to build up, you know, a fan base that can support us, to be able to give us the resources to be able to do so at a later date? That's the kind of mentality that I think, and it kind of sucks. It's kind of bittersweet to say that about a player that has spent years of his life trying to grind at this game, has switched roles, looked great on Tracer back in the day. Shout outs to you know, Team Envision.
Yeah.
But it's kind of disappointing. I really do believe if there was, and I caution this, but that my heart kind of would like to see expansion teams step in. I hope that money is smart. I hope that money is not just another cash grab. But there's too. I think by the end of this offseason, there's going to be too many talented players that are not playing, that either will leave or be disenfranchised and leave at a later date. It's just kind of unfortunate. It's just bittersweet.
It's just the economics of it just don't make any sense.
Yeah,
not saying you need to sign him as a starter. Not saying
I think he could be a starter though.
Not saying that he needs to be the best off tank even available.
Sure.
But it's like, you know, anybody who's played a sports game, right? You have like this one aggregate number after you have all these aggregated stats, right? And those other aggregated stats, I think, put McGravy, and I'm not talking about gameplay stats necessarily,
he's the package
McGravy significantly higher than just where you would place him based on like a starting off tank role. Yep. So that's all kind of we're saying here. I think is a dumb decision. I'm not saying that Valiant are dumb for letting him go. I think the other teams are dumb for not picking it up.
I will say I do like Valiant's coaching staff. Do not get me wrong. I'm very confused on that move in particular, where it seemed like they were very happy with each other, and then McGravy's gone.
And bear in mind, Gig went to the same spot too, though, right? So Gig also is going to Revival.
I'm sorry. I think we're on completely different planes in evaluating McGravy as a player. If you guys think that.
Think what?
That Valiant is losing out.
It's not that they're losing out.
First of all, I specifically did not say that. I say I'm not disagreeing with the Valiant releasing him. I think it's dumb that the other teams out there all gave him a pass.
It had nothing to do with them losing out. It was more, it seemed like a good fit. Seemed like they kind of not enjoyed each other's company. It seems very vapid, but it seemed like a good fit for both, where their budget was. Maybe the budget's increased. Who knows? It was not a departure I was expecting in this offseason. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I have Gravy quite a bit lower as an individual player, to the point where the only thing lifting him in Overwatch League is the brand. I think we got to realize that Gabushi is out there, that Meko is out there, that Fury is out there.
There are players you can plug and play.
I'm fine with putting him as a fringe player. I'm fine with putting him there. I think his other intangibles put him over the top.
I would tend to agree. Maybe I'm putting too much stock into that, though. I don't know. It's difficult to say. A lot of the narrative that I felt from McGravy, from the Valiant, was, this leadership or this ability to kind of, be a field general in that way. And I think that definitely makes up for any kind of, not makes up for fully, but can gives you or give you something to build around for the future. And it seemed like that was, at least in my summation, where the Valiant were headed. The story was there. He worked up through the open trials and had open trial and did well. And they seemed to, I don't know. It was just kind of surprising to me. If they land a better off tank, great.
The thing is, John, you run an open doors with me when you say that the Overwatch League needs to find a mechanism by which we hold the marketable players, because we've been awful at this. These guys run away from us and become bigger brands than
I just
the
think
teams.
building marketable brands, period. I don't even think it's about holding marketable players, but that's a key part in building a marketable brand. And so far, there's quite a few teams who suck at it.
Oh, for sure.
They're completely incompetent at it. And that's really frustrating, knowing that the effort for somebody with expertise to build some of these brands, and I'm not pointing out anybody in particular. I'm not saying the Valiant haven't done this or anything else. But it is not becoming of a brand worth $20 million minimum, a brand that invested $20 million. And that is where, for me, I think that, oh my God, you guys need to shut up right now. Okay. I just, like, my wrist is like bing, bing. It's just, there's a disconnect there. And for everybody in chat who's like, there are better off tanks out there. We now know there's plenty of information out there now that winning does not directly correlate to stronger marketed brands.
Sure.
We know that.
We done know that.
Yeah.
We've been known that.
And we need to stop equating better teams to better franchises, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, even in this space, like esports has learned this years ago. Even in Overwatch, you look at Houston season 1, fan favorite team. I'm sure they did very well for themselves in terms of the economics. You hear that Toronto is killing it in terms of the merch game. Not a team that just, racks in the wins. Let's be honest. Let's be frank, right? wins do not equal money necessarily. They're not correlative in that there's let's say there's not a strong correlation, right? We have to kind of divide that up in terms of what the community sets the expectation for this team and what the actual expectation is. Some of these do not, are not marriages, built to last in that way.
Winning games hasn't increased the jersey sales that I think traditional sports kind of traditionally sees. Like there's definitely that aspect of, you have a team, and this is a little bit of a dated reference, but you have like, the mid 2000s New York Yankees where, anybody who comes to the United States and you're going to buy something that's baseball paraphernalia, you're getting New York Yankees stuff in most cases.
Sure.
And they were winning for a few of those years. And there was a high correlation to that, but there's also just like the Yankees are America's baseball team. And right now we don't have that strong correlation in the Overwatch League. And so it's on brands to build brands while they build their teams.
Yep.
And part of how you can do that and do both is by investing in players that can help you do both. Can
kind of not only do both, but bridge you the gap if you're really looking at it.
If you win, you do not build a brand. That's just what we talked about. There are teams who are winning in this game who don't have very strong brands, or at least don't have strong brands in parts of the world. Guangzhou Charge, I think, are a great example of a team where I don't know how they're doing overseas, but here in the United States, they won quite a bit. They're not doing that great as far as bringing that money in. I think the Paris Eternal are another great example of a team that is underperforming based on their results versus their actual effectiveness as a brand. So,
the thing is, I'm wondering how much Guangzhou invested and what the income outcome is. It's always hard to see because I think very often, like some of these players, you don't actually think.
For sure, you
overestimate what they're making.
100%.
Right? Yeah. But generally, like I agree that they are pretty weak brands. I would, for instance, ever since Level 99 stopped producing the front side of not Vancouver. I feel like, especially also with the other Vancouver, like with Runaway Gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really anything excited.
Pretty bad.
Anything to become excited about with that team, right?
I think I saw the team is on cups at some point. Their favorite anime is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or something. That's I don't know. And that's just being very uncharitable to that org. But it kind of makes the point. It's not somebody who you think spent a ton of money to really get into this league. I've seen a couple names float around in chat that I definitely think make sense with some of the other comments that I've heard. That some of the Canadian teams have looked at. I wouldn't be surprised if they favored Canadian talent over non-Canadian talent. Makes sense again to that brand and marketing's perspective. But in general, I think there are teams that need to reevaluate their vision for the future or just actually have one, because it doesn't seem like we have a ton of that across the league. I think there are very clear teams that have that in mind, and some that just seem to fly by the seat of their pants week in, week out. Yeah.
We're not going to go on this anymore because it's going to take up the whole time, and Chad, you're making me angry. So
yeah.
Shall we travel to Washington?
Let's go to the Washington Justice.
Let's go.
Joe, I'm going to let you just kind of take this one.
So, Mr. Old Man Yiska, I think you've got a little report coming out talking about some new additions and some departures. Care to share?
Right. So, according to our sources, Bria, Bebe, and Closer were signed to the Washington Justice. Also kind of fits the profile that they've recently lost. I will say maybe some unfortunate timing. I didn't know they would be releasing those players today. Our report was scheduled for today. So
Gotcha.
But yeah, in general, I was interested in seeing how people receive that, because once again, I've received really different feedback about some of those players.
Mm-hmm.
And while I generally agree that they, of course, aren't holding the level with their recent signing that they started the offseason with, because I think there's a definitive step down from Mag and DK in the quality.
Yeah.
I also think we're maybe over criticizing them for those moves. So what I will say is, I talked to people about Closer. Some of them weren't super high. Others trialed him and were actually kind of surprised what he was able to bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
It also kind of makes sense. Already in season 1, he was clearly the better mechanical player over Nuss. Was probably something that wasn't necessarily needed for that team at the time. And then he was on the fuel for 2 seasons. Finn, right?
Yeah.
So Closer is a question mark. I also don't really know what to believe. Bebe had a reputation before season 3 start that he was actually popping off in preseason scrims. He was one of the guys that looked really good in that particular meta. And then, of course, I will totally agree that doesn't mean much if you can't bring it over the season.
100%.
And I will say that he underperformed under that reputation pretty considerably, I would say, even though the Spark kind of were on a different run this season as well, in comparison to the second season performance. Rhea, I was surprised to find that a lot of people are actually pretty hyped about him. Generally considered one of the a good pickup. I think that was like the caveat for a lot of people. Keep in mind that he's taken the spot for Janu. So here that's a little interesting how that came to be. Once again, I don't have a definitive evaluation yet. Also because I think there are minutia and little details about the next season that will majorly determine how good specific players are. And one of the ones is, can you play through an entire season? If you don't have a backup, for instance, can you cover the entire champion pool that may be required from you? Can you stem the workload that is probably going to come down on you? And I think, and I don't want to don't nail me on this. It's information that I saw in a Reddit comment and I recall the story. I'm not sure. But I think Rhea was injured as well.
Yeah, I think he had wrist issues, if memory serves me.
Right. So playing the entire season out by yourself doesn't exactly help with that. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, we also don't know if they're done. Even though I will say, I'm not sure if you double up. Let's say you want an 8-man roster this season.
Okay.
I don't think OT is the role you double up on. It's flex support that you probably double up on, unless you have a very mechanically skilled main support, I think. Yeah. And it's probably the DPS roles that you would also want another player, an extra player in there. So it's interesting how teams allocate their specific resources. Also, they have idiosyncratic issues depending on the type of roster that you have. i.e., if I have Profit, maybe, then maybe I have a lesser need for an extra DPS player than other teams do. Because I have someone that covers a lot of roles. If I have a main tank that has demonstrated to be able to play through the entire season at a respectable level, then that is also a role I don't need to double up on. And so on and so forth, right? So
that'd be an interesting question to ask. I think the coaches across the league in general, if you only could have 8 players, there was a ceiling to how many players you could have. At which roles would you add the depth? Would it be DPS? Would we be prescribing the correct, depth in the right places? Is there, like you're saying, is there, niche cases where you can add depth elsewhere because you have, certain star players at certain roles, or you expect the meta to go a certain way? Is there kind of a meta strategy to it? It'd be kind of an interesting one.
I'll also straight up tell you a major determining factor, and I think we just take that for granted, and maybe I'm the only one skeptical about this, but I don't know if the outcome of what we experience with hero pools necessarily indicates, was so highly positive that it needs to be kept around for the next season. But if it is kept around for the next season, then you have the requirements of playing hero pools with an 8-man roster where you probably can't foresee whatever. It is not inherent in the game that these particular roles need a double up. It's not inherent in the game that we need 2 flex supports in some metas. For all we know, there could be meta states where you actually need 2 main tanks or whatever.
Sure. Or you don't need any main tanks.
Weird stuff like Ryan and Winston would never happen. But there you have the archetypical main tank heroes that should be played by the main tank, rarely played by someone else than the main tank.
I mean, is it that far-fetched to say that something like that would never happen when playoffs of last year was literally 0 main tanks being played within the top 4? And then at the start of the year, if, again, it's been a funky year, forgive me if I misremember this, but Ryan Orisa was being played.
All right.
So I think everything's on the table. You could have double main supports or double traditional main supports. You could have double hit scan. You could have double projectile. I think that's probably the one meta that we've yet to see, or at least a lot of, but it could be anything, really.
Yeah, I agree. So, bless the teams that have to make that decision. It's also why I think that there might be a second wave. We'll see. There's so many unknown factors at this point that it's I'm going to attempt to have a pre-preseason power rankings around Christmas. I'll tell you, I won't be nailed to those evaluations. It's more like
yes, you will.
I'm sure people will.
It's more like
I will literally post them on every show for the 2021
This
season.
is what Yiska said, hold them accountable.
Yep. Well, just every time you speak, instead of having where the chat window is where you are, over there on the left-hand side, it's just going to be your preseason power rankings. So every time you speak.
Yeah, you're going to get a preseason power ranking, and then you're going to get a post-preseason power rankings. And then please only judge me by the latter. I think the first one is more an evaluation of how I see the teams played the offseason.
I think, I think there are ways you can format that it's very understandable that these are, not set in stone.
Right.
One thing I did kind of want to pin you on was the idea that Washington wasn't following the same direction of signing 2 of the best players in the game. Is that fair to say? Is that kind of a disingenuous take that you signed the hottest rookie main tank and potential MVP candidate and not try to follow that? That's got to be hard, right? You have to admit that.
It is hard, but there is also a team that signed Hanbin and Sparkle, then signed Fearless.
True. And they have then that dirty fuel money.
Right.
You think Washington's running around with sick tennis money?
I don't know, but no,
I agree.
Mean, we can't. It's not a bad role to splooge on. The arguably hardest hard carry that we've seen in Overwatch League yet is not a bad resource to splooge on. So we'll see how the resource allocation works out for them. It's all new once again for us. And the beauty is that we can, with the power of hindsight, sit here and go next September, oh my God, we saw that coming from a mile away. What did you do, dude? Yeah. And then,
or just look like you have egg on your face, like us with Paris, or specifically me with Paris. I agree. I think there's a lot of room to be surprised. I think there's a lot of stock that's down on a lot of these former Spark players because they did not have a great season last year, right? Like, I think people are really down on Bebe. People are, I've been a criticizer of Closer, but I've heard, good things. Just ends up on the Dallas Fuel. It's one of those, maybe these are the gems from these kind of broken teams coalescing on what looks to be a promising team at the very least, right? Is this a team that is confidently within that top 10 brawl that, per last show anybody could win the league? Is this a team in your summation that could win the league?
I think their delta is 3-8.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
So could they win the league?
Nope.
Yeah, low probability. Then again, dude, they could have won the league last year. This is how bad Overwatch sometimes is, dude.
Oh, hold on. Actually, I think they just made the league-winning play.
Oh.
No, don't get trolled. Stop.
No. Here's the thing, though. Jokes aside, because this is a joke.
Yeah, this is a meme account, guys.
But it's a meme account, so settle down. But
all right.
I
thought they got you.
My Discord bot did pick up that the Florida Mayhem are parting with Chris. And that they are going to a team in NA because they said that we look forward to playing against you. So, and then the Mayhem promptly deleted it. So,
right.
Just saying. Just saying.
That's strange. Would the social media manager no?
Maybe. I mean, that's some tinfoil hat stuff that I'm not about to get into, but yeah, I don't know. I will say I've talked to coaches this season where I told them where their players are going, and they were kind of confused because I had something different. So I think very often staff is not really, unless they are the people handling the contracts and whatnot. Mm. Yeah. We have them 3-8. I tend to agree with that. For the departing players, Janu, Stitch, Aim God, do you think they land anywhere? Obviously,
I think
Stitch
Janu
coming
has
off
a good chance.
So, have you talked to anybody about Janu? I feel like there is some like mixed. He's another one of those cases that is kind of a mixed bag. Is this like a positive player across the board that you've heard from, or is that prescription from my end right?
Thing is, Janu kind of makes sense for them because Janu doesn't have one of his weaknesses is that he doesn't have a super good Zarya, and that doesn't matter if you have DK in your team unless there's some meta shenanigans going on, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think Janu is a player that should be finding work in the Overwatch League. I think also an interesting thing for this was to see like the fall from grace from this guy's a top 3 main tank, everyone acknowledges it, to now we're saying Rhea is an upgrade, and which I saw as a feedback of this move. So that's interesting. But yeah, the idea is there. It's, of course, we also always have to consider economical reasons. And we'll see. Like, there's still a bunch of teams where he could be going, and looking forward to that, because I don't think the league should be rid of Janu, or it's wrong phrasing. The league would likely lose by not having Janu.
Yeah, we are at a point though, and this is, let's circle back to McGravy here. No, just kidding. But we are at a point here though where there's a lot of really good competition for a lot of roles.
Right.
And there are going to be, I think more than any other season, players who probably we feel deserve a spot on a roster who actually don't end up on a roster.
Yeah.
Which is both a good problem to have short term, But long term, you want to expand that league out because it's just free money.
Yeah, I think I hope that this season there aren't too many people super disenfranchised without getting a spot. I tend to side with Yiska in saying that there probably will be some mid-season moves, and this is probably one of the higher chances or higher likelihoods that this season has an increase in that. Whether or not it's like another wave where everybody's just kind of making moves, or if it's just specific teams making moves throughout the season, or throughout the trade window, that's remains to be seen. Closing thoughts on Spark, or not Spark, but the Justice. I like Bebe.
Basically, I'd love Spark, though, right?
Kind of feels like it with Supreme coming in, right? There's a part of me, my heart wants an X6 reunion. My heart wants Supreme to really toss around the bag and continue to bring in former X6 players. If you're looking for some old man strength, Godsby's probably not going to be.
I think that's shipped, right? You get Jerry, you get DK. You don't need
maybe you trade Jerry to Spark. Yeah. You get Godsby. Get the boys back together. But that's what my heart says. My brain doesn't make sense, right? I've always been a big supporter of Rhea. I think when he joined X6 in place of Choi, I think it did not. If you remove the nameplates, it didn't seem all that different. Granted, that's years ago at this point. And obviously his performance on the Spark wasn't great, but the Spark's performance in general wasn't great. So I really do have a lot of stock in this Justice squad thus far. I think this is going to be a very promising team. I think 3D8's a good spot. To NYXL, I think it's time to have the funeral.
Oh man.
I think it's time to get real sad, boys.
It is a sad time.
Supreme wasn't an X6. I think it's just the collection of players that were there. Just that's where my heart leads. But regardless.
Yes, let's talk about the NYXL here. And this is a big one. We've been talking about NYXL for the last couple of shows because we talked, and we're not going to speak too much more on it today because I feel like I've, rang that bell a few too many times. But the New York Excelsior have essentially gutted a lot of the players that we kind of discussed over the past couple of days. Sabiolbi, gone. Libero and Anamo, gone. Jonak, it appears for now, is still there. But we don't actually know for sure because he was on a team option, and I don't believe that we have an official announcement that team option has been exercised.
Yeah.
But we also don't have an LFT. So, first of all, I am now out of 4 jerseys with player names on them. They're all out of date now, so boo. But this is interesting. Assuming Jonak stays, I think that we discussed this exact scenario in which I said I think you keep either Jonak or Sabiolbi just to anchor down like that fan base. So if they do that, I think that makes a ton of sense, just purely on the player side. On the player side, we're basically at blank slate at this point.
Yeah.
Right? If Jonak stays, one player returns. If Jonak stays. Otherwise, it might be an entirely brand new team in 2021.
Yep.
It's a gamble.
It's a sad day. It's sad to see, a legend of the game like Sabiolbi, without a team and his future kind of up in jeopardy. He's already talked about maybe hanging it up for good in the past. It's a sobering thought to kind of return to that. Obviously, he hasn't said anything publicly, so I won't make any claims, but it's a weird time. Not a ton of roster spots going around. We've already kind of hinted at throughout the show that, there might be talent left on the table. I do wonder if maybe he's one of those talents that are left on the table. Libero, it's been what a ride for this kid that, should have, at least in all prescriptive measure of how good we all thought he was, never really got the play time to showcase it. en masse or got the play time that I think he deserved. I think he'll probably land on his feet. And I've been a pretty big anti-fan of Anamo for a long time, so I'm not mad at that.
That's fair. How you feeling, Yiska?
Yeah, like happy to have witnessed that core in season 1. I'm not gonna lie, like I wrote like a news. It popped during work, and then I couldn't write just the news on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had some happy tears thinking about that roster.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, like if you weren't part of Overwatch prior to Overwatch League, I think the things that you can fall in love with is Stage 1, Season 1 finals against London. The shattering and just seeing how much it meant to these guys, and seeing also listening to the player interviews later on with Pine. And then following their journey, like they were truly, truly excellent in the first season. And all they really needed was like a good meta and 2 more weeks. And this team would have been just like the shock, how we should think of the shock in the last 2 seasons. I think they brought in a lot of excitement and also brought out qualities about Overwatch that make it feel like it means something, right? The sacrifices that these guys made, the values that they portrayed of unity, of even standing together when things look hopeless. I want to maybe take Sebiolbi there and elevate him a little bit in his leadership. I think if this was going to be it, then he has a great career to look onto. I think he should be held in people's and players' hearts with the same fondness that a Ruji Hong currently commands. I think the same. I think the other players probably are more likely to have a future than Sebiobi at this point, even though I still think he's probably the second best tracer in the Asian region that has had a
for sure
big problem with having these. Yeah, like that. It made me happy to have witnessed that. Of course, there's also some sadness because it's never going to be the same again. No, it just isn't.
And that's the beauty of sports, you know. You get attached, you get to appreciate and you know, lay marvel to, you know, a great. And I don't know that we'll ever see anybody like SBB and Apex on the Tracer and on the Roadhog, and you know, having that kind of commanding leadership that, you know, former players that have worked with him, the coaching staff has always talked about. You know, this is the captain, and they've marketed that extremely well. And it's not even just a marketing thing. It really does feel genuine. It does feel real when the players say that.
That's the best marketing, by the way.
Yeah, it really is. When you have these moments, and I'm gonna completely miss the mark on this. I believe it was. I don't think it was last year. I think it was the 2019 season. You know, with him trying to console Flower on stage, you know, holding his hand, you know, trying to mentally bring him back and try to focus him up. That's one of those moments that I think probably will be one of the most touching moments. I'd say in esports, I think that really goes to show who these people are. Not in some sort of weird prescriptive like narrative analysis way, but it was a real glimpse into like that dynamic between that team. for the future of Sabiolbi, I think I'd love to see him, and I think it would be a fantastic move. I think he has a knack for leadership. Any team that is looking for a coach in contenders, or even the Overwatch League as an assistant coach, I think that door's always open. I genuinely believe that. Obviously, never spoken to him or around him, but from everything that I see, and my gut, I think that he has a future if he so chose to move in that path. It really is. Yeah, it's a sad one. It's a legend that we will remember 5 years down the road very fondly. I'm looking forward to the future matches and the show matches when we get to see Lunatic High and LW Blue, battle it out, as old men. But yeah, it's sad. Hopefully, he finds some sort of home, finds some happiness in his future endeavors.
I was talking with Trevor May, baseball player for the Minnesota Twins and super active in gaming and esports, and we were talking about kind of like Hall of Fame for Overwatch League, and actually brought up Sabiolbi, and he isn't like an avid Overwatch League roster. So like even Sabiolbi is like, yeah, I know of Sabiolbi, but he's not like there to be like, oh yeah, he was really great in this and this and this.
Right.
But we're just kind of having a conversation about Hall of Famers, and he kind of brought up, he goes, Sabiolbi kind of reminded me of he goes, I told him, I said Sabiolbi reminds me of like Derek Jeter. Where Derek Jeter is not the best shortstop in the world. He was a really solid shortstop. But if there is any single person who doubts like what Derek Jeter did for the game of baseball, they're not real baseball fans. And Sabiolbi like really kind of resonates for me with that, in the sense that there is just kind of this player that very rarely does a player good enough at the game, but is also able to transcend beyond the game in a way that can then circle back into, kind of having that lasting impact. And I think Sabiolbi is one of the, when Katie and I went to BlizzCon and we went to World Cups, and I think that there was show matches and stuff too, there was two players who Katie would talk about nonstop, and one of those was Sabiolbi. And it wasn't because I had talked about Sabiolbi a bunch of times, or that I told her to watch Sabiolbi, or that Sabiolbi was my favorite player. It was just like she naturally gravitated to loving Sabiolbi based on how he played the game, how he came out on the stage, how I think he might have conducted like an interview, or we saw some like highlights or stuff, and boom, that was all she needed. And that's a really kind of it's Jeturian in how like that effect that he had. And so it's a really big bummer to lose. I feel like they might have like I feel like they might have pulled the trigger one season too early. I feel like he could have had one more good leading season in him, but that's just me.
Sorry, what I will say about Sabiolbi is, imagine telling someone about Sabiolbi. That's a guy that lacks front teeth and has a laugh about it. That pours water out on his mouse pad and has to wipe his hand because either it's a tick or he has some medical condition. He always talks about his wife and being married.
It's true.
And then explain to that person that this guy really generally isn't considered goofy. He has goofy elements, but he is graceful in all of it somehow. Like that's a male role model in how he portrays himself. Just like someone that values whatever he like, just like carries out what he really values and is like seems to be fully committed to it. And I will also say the entire roster, their committance to a passive play style also has a sense of grace, because I think like in my mind it's it's like a game theoretical inherent thing in almost everything we could talk about. Yeah. That unskilled or skilled aggression is generally easier to pull off than defensive maneuvers.
Yep.
If you barge in first strike, it's a lot harder to defend against that when you don't know what's coming. That goes to all parts of life, through genetics, through behavior, through who leads, through all of it. Mm-hmm. And for them to have chosen a passive playstyle and to still be successful with it because they understood the dance to the level that they did when they were at their greatest is a game theoretical achievement that I don't think we will see to that degree in a long time unless the game fundamentally changes towards favoring it. I think the idea of perfect Overwatch that they had during season 1 might have sounded stupid at the time because they didn't get the dub, but the beauty of that idea and the idolization of that had brought such a cool flavor to the game that I don't think we saw over the following seasons. And it also therefore makes sense that when you are so skillfully passive that you're going to lose the arms race in ever-changing metas. It is unfortunately under hero pools. I don't think that's a thing that ever will be achieved. In order to play passive, you need to understand the full range of the attack vector. That's unachievable in our system. So I will also hold them in regard for what they did for the game of Overwatch and how at times beautifully they played it. Like if you check the energy of all the great teams we had in Overwatch, then it's like San Francisco Shock is just like, this mega, and I don't want to say like it's a high skill aggressive team that takes fights, especially like this season, and pops ultimates and believes that they can win it, right? If you look at Vancouver Titans, that was a team almost with chaotic energy that were just so amazing at individually and also just could pull it off from the brink repeatedly, just by the ideas that they shared and the synergy that they had built and the resistance that this team had built up from the repeated failure that they had to go through. NYXL is the team that took a break from Apex Season 4, its core, in order to prepare for what was to come. And then executed that against like London, that were like complete skill beasts, were dominant throughout the mid-season in Season 1, and then couldn't do it during a meta change, which makes perfect sense, all things considered, right? So yeah, I will miss the play style and the energy that these players brought to the strategical sphere of the Overwatch League as well, because I don't think we will see it again.
No, and it's sad that we've devised some sort of weird handicap for ourselves, that it makes it very difficult to have stylized teams, because there are very few teams with such a very apparent and obvious style. I think when we talk about funny teams like the Chengdu Hunters, these stylized, very character driven teams, and it's not to say that New York was a character or hero driven team, but they were like, you knew what you were getting, and it was very different. It was something that you could really dive into and talk about and look at these matchups. And I think that's the beauty of, like MMA or maybe boxing is these styles make the matches, they make the fights. I'd love to see that explored more in Overwatch, and we kind of have a hindrance to that with hero pools. I think you alluded to that beautifully. And I think to I guess what will we call them? The 2017 to 2020 NYXL or 2019 NYXL. They should be talked about in the same vein as this very stylized team, and should be applauded in that way. And I think your little prose on Sabiolbi was beautiful. And one sentence that kind of really stuck out to me, or the crystallization of it. Sabiolbi can't help but be himself, and I think that's something that you can really look at and respect and applaud. So, yeah, I'm. It's a bittersweet day for NYXL. I think it's a attempt at to shed the style of this passive play style. It's unfortunately at the cost of some veterans and legends, and yeah, we'll have to see what else 2020 has in store for us as we close out the year.
Also, I think the logical transition from here on out is to say, like, embrace the new beginning. I will say I don't expect the new roster to do as well as the NYXL did over the last 3 seasons. They need to rebuild that stuff from scratch once again. I think they have some great pieces overall that they're going to bring in. When I reported on this Feather was contested, is a really, really good DPS player there. Sorry?
I think I kind of slightly disagree. I don't think that I don't think they have to do as well as NYXL has. They went 13 and 8th. They hit 7th. They went 2 rounds deep in playoffs, if I remember correctly. I can't remember if they did or didn't. But so, they went a little bit deeper and sure. But I don't think that this is a team that you can build back and not at least have a really good chance at being top 10. I think that when it comes to just kind of building brands in general, it's an economy. Marketing is an economy. It's about making deposits and it's about making withdrawals based on whatever you need to do to grow that brand long term. You create deposits by winning, signing great players, putting out great content, making great merch, having sales, whatever. You make withdrawals when you get rid of those players, you lose, you make whatever sort of mistakes, personal mistakes that, kind of get brought into the public eye. You make those types of withdrawals from your overall kind of brand loyalty, brand fandom, whatever else you want to put that in. By largely gutting this team, they're making a huge withdrawal right now. And I think NYXL is one of the few teams that can put up with it. But they need to make some pretty hefty deposits here. And looking at some of the players still available, I don't know if they're able to just I don't think that you can just do a standing ovation roster here. And I'm just trying to look let's see, unless they went DM, Rascal, Sato, Fury, Violet Slime, just done that would be maybe enough to be well, holy shit, they're just ready to go to the next thing. They're going to have to make some big signings here, and they're going to have to win a little bit. Otherwise, you put your brand 2 steps back from where you were, I would say, a year and a half to 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and one safe thing that, is just broke is that, Jonak is going to be staying with the NYXL for the 2021 season. So
this literally broke 2 minutes ago. So I wasn't intentionally ignoring that.
And I will say that wasn't a given this offseason either. So that they secured him is a plus for them.
I think that's a big plus. And I think, again, that's one of the players that you need to keep on there, because there is still now okay, I could still hold on. I could still be a fan of NYXL. Still love Jonak. You still kept your MVP. There is still that aspect of it. I don't think that the withdrawals are nearly as much, but even still, you're still talking about Sabi will be gone. You're still talking about that original season 1, season 2 NYXL that people really grew fondly of. And so I think that they do need to try. I mean, it's an oversimplistic thing to say they need to try to build a roster to win, because obviously every team is trying to do that within their means. But this is a team that I don't know if they can make this drastic of a change and not finish top half of the league. Like I feel like that would be.
It's going to be competitive.
I feel like
that's the problem.
It's tough.
It is going to be competitive. It is going to be tough. But I think that if that is the goal NYXL should have, if they don't want to end up withdrawing more than they deposit in this next season, and that's my lens there.
Right.
I'm not saying that they're a done brand or they they suck or they're a bunch of idiots. Like I'm not saying that there's any of that. I'm just saying that I think that the brand overall takes a step back this season if they don't make some big signings and end up in the top 10.
I will say what I like about the New York's organization, despite their very clean like social media and branding and whatnot, is also that they are one of the non-stagnant teams where I think it's very easy for them to just ride this out. Like they could have re-signed all these guys. Maybe it would have been like pretty expensive. Okay.
I hate to interrupt you for a second, but I do just want to thank you. Moth just came into the chat and hosted us, so rated us.
Oh, nice.
So thanks, Sweet. Moth. Appreciate it, man. We're excited for you in 2021, dude.
Yeah.
Do us proud. Anyways, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so we were at NYXL is a brand that usually doesn't stick to ideas that they don't believe in anymore. So if you remember back the problems that they had with the XL2 roster, instead of just like throwing it in and just like saying, okay, let's phone it in, they tried to find a new approach. And with the tri-state idea that got a lot of flack in the beginning, I think we misinterpreted how that narrative broke loose. Mm-hmm. And I also think we need to wait in order for this team to be evaluated. I know the New York fans rightfully have high standards, and as they should have.
As they are.
But it would also not be fair towards the new players if they had to fight against the storm and step into these gigantic footsteps that the others have left. Because I will tell you, there will be names where when that guy is announced, you will go who?
Yeah, you're gonna roll your eyes 100%. But I appreciate where that's coming from, and I agree that like we shouldn't prescribe them too much. But like, let's face facts here. Let's be frank. It's kind of inevitable that you're going to be stepping in the shoes of legends of the game.
If you replace Tom Brady on the New England Patriots, it doesn't matter if it's fair for you to be compared as to having to step into his shoes. You are filling those shoes. And so while, yes, I agree that we should extend that grace and extend that like self-knowledge of the fact that, hey, this is a brand new team. It doesn't make logical sense to apply the same logical rules to this squad that we had to, the former LW Blue squad previously. It's going to happen anyway.
Yep.
Especially as one of, I would say 3 teams who have, I think, best built their overall brand to success.
And to be fair, that's not to say that they won't exceed expectations. Obviously Chad coming in with some spot on points. A lot of people came in and was like, on to, looking at season 1, for those who weren't in the know in the Korean scene, I think people gave a side eye to Jonak. Like, who's this guy? Like, yeah, he was supposed to play on LW Blue in Apex season 4, but we never really got to see him. Who's this? Like, we don't know this guy. And look where he ended up now. Like, there are some rookies that come in that you might not be necessarily familiar with, but are very talented. And it sounds like Feather is possibly one of those players with how many looks he got in the offseason with multiple teams. I will say, I do want to stem that tide as much as you can, as much as I think it's inevitable that, this new NYXL team is probably going to be stepping in giant footholds. We do have to try and view them through a new NYXL 2.0 lens and give them that benefit of the doubt. And from the org's perspective, I think they're doing a good thing. I really appreciate the messaging from Nugget coming out and talking directly to the community. I think and I hope they continue to do that, because like you're saying, with playing within John's metaphor here with withdrawing and depositing, I think they hopefully I'm getting this right. I think they withdrew a lot.
Yes.
This was a big withdrawal.
We
have to start to apply and build that back up, because I've surfed the Reddit. I've broken the streak, and I've looked at Reddit for a few glances today, and it's a sad day for Rain. It's just kind of sad in general. If you're an NYXL fan, if you're an Overwatch fan, it's depressing to see these players without a home right now.
And
so they have to work at that, depositing that back in.
This is why I wish Overwatch League teams and the Overwatch League in general, it may not be a team issue. It may just be like a league organization issue. I would love to see a lot more transitional teams versus, all right, this year, it's kind of like, in high school sports where like a class graduates and there were 8 of the 10 starters. And so you're back down to like 2 people and it's just new people every year. Professional sports, you kind of need, or you want to retain a little bit of that familiarity. You want a nice steady churn. You want people to see people come up into an organization, go in, play that, but buy Yiska, play that full, the cams will hopefully fix themselves shortly, guys. Sorry. They kind of come up into that starting role and then they play through until their time is done and they go through. But through that whole time, you have these new players. And a big part of that, I think we were hoping to see out of like 2-way players and academy teams should really feed that. And it feels like it's a system designed to give you that. So we don't see a team that is like the NYXL where you look at it and you go, there's one person here I recognize. There's one person here whose jersey I could have bought last year and it still be relevant. So, like it's a bummer. It's
and to your
a
point,
hefty withdrawal.
Yes, it's a big withdrawal, 100%. And to your point, we have the notion there are talks about teams reinvesting back into tier 2 when it makes financial sense. Spoke with not too long ago, is committed to that, is steadfast. Wasn't even pressing the question, didn't necessarily land on tier 2, but he brought it there. So it made me feel like he was really looking at it. On top of that, we're hearing, stirrings that teams are, looking at a return in the near future with these new, contract rules and whatnot. So we're setting ourselves up for success in that area, which is fantastic. I think, again, if you have any questions on what John's saying, or you wonder if that could be a thing that esports is like mature enough to do, there are teams, maybe not within our space, but in other spaces that are kind of paving that way. And I look at Cloud9 in their League of Legends squad. I look at bringing Rain over up from their academy team. If I'm getting that right, hopefully I am, because it's kind of a nice story and really supports what John's saying, that you can have transition, you can have a plan for the future. We need to kind of bring that mentality to Overwatch, because it is a space to allow it. There isn't a giant relegation. You have the safety to make a plan for the future and execute on it.
Especially on good teams. Like it's one thing when you're a bad team, you go 2-20. And so you got everything, you get everybody out. Like that can actually be a withdrawal or a deposit in a lot of cases. But when you have a team like NYXL, that is a good team, that has had good experience, like has had good results. You want to build on that. You want to roll. You want to snowball that, right? You don't want to stop the snowball. And they're kind of in a spot where they're looking like they might be, stopping the snowball. And it might end up working out for them. They might do better than ever. They 100%. Might win the league. We don't know. But at face value today, what that says is, we're stopping, we're getting off the train, we're going on something else, a different direction. And it's kind of weird when that train is collecting gold as you're going or something. I don't know how to fit that metaphor. Anyways,
it's a very, known train. It's a very successful train. You know what you're getting from that train. yeah, I'd like to see Overwatch stop getting in its own way. And I hope that this is a concerted effort from all branches of, the proverbial Overwatch government to kind of come together and allow teams the freedom to be able to plan for the future and not get thrown a loop, let's say.
To be honest, I don't think it's totally on Overwatch League either. Like, professional sports league takes decades to put something like that together.
100%.
We have
and
the
you have to give them that
framework,
grace.
so you'd expect it to go faster, but then you also have esports. You have esports careers, specifically as a player, being significantly shorter, at least as it exists now. You're talking, 6 years if you're, get right in at 18 in Overwatch League and you're, done by 24, 25. So there is definitely, I think, a lot of asterisks that you put next to all that, and that those are problems that I don't think anybody, even on paper, if we solve it, doesn't mean that it's actually solved in execution.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I think, and I agree with you. I agree. There's a lot of asterisks there. The notion that I'm trying to touch on is that we're not doing ourselves any favor on trying to improve that, trying to eliminate those asterisks as best as we can. It feels like we're adding to it. We're changing the game constantly, and that's not even just patches, though. Those are just like these overarching fundamental gameplay changes. We're not doing ourselves favors, and hopefully everybody, the players, the orgs, the teams, Activision Blizzard gets on board and really gives them a chance to have a style, to have characteristics, to really build themselves out and have a vision for the future, because right now it feels difficult to be able to invest in that.
It does. Welcome back, Yiska.
Sorry, my internet's
Yeah, you're good. It
Sucks.
happens.
You're in lockdown right now, and
yeah, it's
your
probably. I
internet's
mean,
going
that's the
out,
reason why.
and you
Yeah,
work on the internet.
yeah.
I'm kind of surprised we haven't faced something very similar. Like, we had like a windstorm not so long ago, and power was up for question, but didn't lose it. But yeah, the infrastructure here is definitely held up, which is kind of surprising.
Wish we could say the same about Bay Area, California, because we've had like power outages and like resetting the grid and stuff, because we're all using so much more electricity because we're all home every
bored.
day.
Netflixing.
Really good conversations today. Thanks everybody who hung out. Hope you had a ton of fun. Big thanks again to Moth for the raid.
Super sweet.
Hope some of you Moth peeps have found a new place to come hang out and chat about Overwatch League with us. If you are brand new, this is the Tactical Crouch podcast. We discuss Overwatch League and competitive Overwatch twice every week on Mondays and Wednesdays right here. And yeah, we have a lot of fun doing it. Big thank you to our new patrons, and they're both patron producers, Sir Girthalot and Bronze Bot Boohow. Thanks so much. Welcome back. And our patron producers are Refined Bean, Ferdino Pin, Battlecrab, Lolshin, Rex Zane, Audio Compass, Kasha 67, Shara Picasso, Nathan Your Misery, Hunter Tane, Fabled Steven, Roger B. Owen, Chris R3444444444, Horbjorn. I listened to the podcast whilst on the toilet and in the shower thinking of Yiska, Peace Camper, Shrek 2 on DVD, Sir Girthalot and Bronze Bot Boohow. Thanks so much for supporting the show. And a big thank you to the brand new subs today of Sir Madams and Sam Foster, as well as our resubs, Firelord Arkin, Butthur Emails, Shumi26, Porkchop Sammy, Wellard OW. Yeah, and again, Moth, thanks so much for the raid. Shields up. Appreciate you. If you like the show, want to support, subscribe right here. Go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch or leave us a 5-star iTunes review. If you've got an iPhone, just go to the podcast app. It's pre-downloaded on your phone. Type in Tactical Crouch. Leave a 5-star review and a little message, and we'll shout you out on the next show. Other than that, let's do shoutouts for the week. Where people could find you. Yiska, what's up?
As always at GG Recon. Of course, we did the reports to this week. I'm not 100% if I'll have one more this week. As you guys know, I only report on signed contracts, so we'll see.
Cool. Joe, what about you, man?
Yeah, you can find me on all the socials. You'll my name's somewhere. You'll figure it out. After the show, I think I'm doing some Valorant stuff, looking at that for the First Strike qualifiers.
Cool.
And probably write some notes on, an NYXL piece. I think it's high time we revisit the old married man meta and give him a nice send off.
Yeah. Cool. Well, as for me, you can find me everywhere at Kickedtripod, Twitch, Twitter, youtube.com/KickedtripodYT. With Shadowlands coming out next week, I am going to be streaming quite a bit more. Hopefully I get my my new graphics card before then. I'm like 8th in the queue at our local retailer now. So, and I was at 60th last Friday, so it's gone fast. So hopefully we get it and we're upgraded by then. But either way, I am going to be streaming it. I just don't know how good a quality it's going to be. And yeah, other than that, shows next week are going to be a little weird because we do have Thanksgiving. We haven't totally decided on what that is going to look like. Same with game nights, but we are going to do a game night next week. We are going to do at least one show next week. So stay tuned on our Twitter for that, tactical_crouch. And yeah, I think that's it. All right, chat, we're out of here. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time for Tactical Crouch.